We're on. All right, there we go. Good evening, everybody. This is a meeting of the Stowe Select Board, October 26, 2021. We've got everybody here tonight, and I will start with public input, if there is any. We don't have anybody in the room, and anybody online? All right. I just have a couple of things. It might be obvious that given we don't have a lot of people with us tonight, the planning board's having a hearing at 7:30 on the zoning change proposed for the Bose property. If you want to join that, if you're listening at home, you might want to switch over to that at 7:30. Denise will be talking more about the town meeting, also this Saturday at Hale, starting at 10 o'clock. And just a reminder, trick-or-treating on Sunday, 5 to 8 is what the police department suggests. And there's lots of great suggestions for trick-or-treating rules and safety tips on the Stowe website. Jim, I think you had another announcement, recognition?
I just wanted to update the board. You may recall at our first meeting in September, we had Mark Roberts and his dog Mocha visit us in preparation for their stroll across Massachusetts from the New York border to Provincetown. They began their journey on September 18th at the New York border. It's now October 26th. They've been at it roughly 5 weeks. They have made tremendous progress in all kinds of weather. I believe tonight they're in Plymouth, and that they will hit Sagamore Bridge on Thursday. They're taking tomorrow off because of the weather. I just want to say I was able to drive their safety car a couple of days, and it's very touching to see all the people who stop and give them money, who like stop their cars in the middle of the road, jump out, hand them $5 or $10. He is getting a lot of publicity. They've raised quite a bit of money, I believe about 60% of their goal toward $100,000, but they have a long way to go. And if anybody wants to donate, it's www.forhunger, the number 4hunger.org.
It's been fun to watch them on Facebook, posting their updates. So, and their due date for Provincetown is November.
I want to say November 8th, now that they're taking an extra day. But I mean, he's doing 8, 9, 10 miles a day. You wouldn't think he would have made this kind of progress, and he didn't do it the direct diagonal way. He went straight to Boston. He was on the marathon route for a while, and now he's gone straight down roughly 3A.
Wow.
To the bridge.
Very cool. Awesome. Any other, yeah.
We had a capital planning committee meeting, so I just wanted to relay back to the board that the capital planning committee voted unanimously to recommend the approval of Stow Acres, so I want to make sure I said that. I also conveyed this board's unanimous and enthusiastic support of that, as well as the praise that we all gave to Denise and staff for such a great job negotiating the project. So I just wanted to relay that back to you all, so another checkbox as we head towards Saturday.
Great. Thank you. Thanks. Anything else? Oh, all right. So we have one appointment tonight, and I see Steve is on the call, waiting for the trees to start falling down, Steve, and giving you a little break here. So, sorry, don't want to make light of that. You're gonna be super busy, I expect, the next 2 days. So we have an appointment of Nicolo Antonelli to the position of full-time tree worker for the highway department. We have the letter in the packet. I don't know if anybody has any questions for Steve since he's on the call. Or Steve, if you want to add anything?
I don't have anything to add from the letter.
Great. He's done tree work before specifically, right?
He has been doing tree work for the last year for the town.
Okay.
We've been training him to bring him up. This has been advertised several times. It's tough to find people in today's job market, so he's been slowly climbing his way up, learning. He's also related to D&D Farms and has some experience from his uncle running D&D tree service in town.
Great.
And we have him signed up for some training to get him more acclimated with the tree industry, so.
Perfect. Yeah, tree work makes me nervous. My brother was a landscaper, so I had a little too many much information about tree work, so just want to make sure we keep them all safe, so. So if there's no other questions or comments, take a motion. Who's doing motions?
I'll do it.
All right.
Madam Chair, I move to appoint Nicolo Antonelli to the position of full-time tree worker for the Stowe Highway Department.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That is unanimous. Thank you, Steve, for finding someone, and thank you to Nicolo. Great.
Thank you.
Yep, have a good night. Good luck with everything with the storm. So Denise, you're up.
Yes, let me take a deep breath because I have a lot. So first, we are gonna start with special town meeting information. Special town meeting is this Saturday at Hale School. Check-in begins at 9 a.m. The meeting starts at 10 a.m. Masks will be required for indoors. For those who do not have a mask or forget, we will have masks. Because schools are no longer required to social distance with mask requirements, we're gonna follow the same regulations, so there will not be any social distancing requirements indoors. There is an area outside that folks may bring their own chair and sit outside the auditorium. We did check the clickers, they worked almost the length of that sidewalk.
Oh, good.
I will say, however, the weather as of today is not looking great for Saturday morning, so folks can bring an umbrella, they can bring a pop-up tent if they wanna sit outside. Other than a speaker, we're not gonna provide any other resources out there, so if they won't be able to see the presentations, but they'll hear it. If they wanna speak, they'll have to come inside, but they will be able to hear everything and vote from outside if they choose to do so. We also have planned a beta hearing impaired section. We are going to test the use of Zoom and the live transcript for a specific section in the auditorium, so that folks that need to read, obviously it's not the best transcript, we have some issues with the wording, but at least it will give folks a sense of the meeting if they have trouble hearing it. So we will have that available as well for Saturday. Now, so I wanna talk about the Masters Academy. And forgive me, I am still coughing. So as the chair mentioned, the public hearing is happening tonight before the planning board with the vote at town meeting on Saturday. And I wanna make it clear for anyone who still does not understand, the vote on Saturday is only to change the zoning. It is only to change the possibility of allowing a for-profit educational facility in an industrial district. As of today, if the Masters Academy International wanted to build a nonprofit school and not pay taxes, they could do that today. There are no zoning requirements, there are no changes needed, and quite frankly, then they would fall under the Dover Amendment and would not need to adhere to most of our zoning. That is a fact, they could absolutely do that. The school has chosen not to do that. They want to pay taxes, they want to be for profit, which is why we are encouraging the zoning change. So there's been confusion, there's been things in the paper, I've put things in the paper. Should the zoning change happen, there will be a full public process for the construction and development and building of the Masters Academy. There will be abutter notifications when they're necessary, there will be public hearings, there will be DEP requirements on the water table, there will be a traffic management plan looked into. All of that still has to come if the zoning change happens. I also want to clarify that as part of the bylaw change, if the bylaw is approved, it would require the developers and the owners of the MAI to negotiate with this board a development agreement that would allow us to discuss the impact that this school would have on the town and figure out how to mitigate that. For instance, one of the number one concerns that I've heard is we're gonna have 700 kids, they're gonna be running amok, they're gonna be drag racing down the streets. First of all, I don't believe any of that, but it will likely require an additional police officer, possibly an additional school resource officer. We would work those types of things into this agreement, so they would pay for that officer to assist with the school. There may be some fire needs as far as the building and the rinks, and we may need apparatus to deal with emergencies on that site. We've talked about traffic mitigation and what they can do for the site, what they can do for 117. Additionally, I keep getting questions of whether people can continue to walk and enjoy the campus. Quite frankly, there is no trespassing signs posted everywhere right now because it is private property. So I appreciate that people are walking and enjoying it and Bose is not enforcing it. Again, that is something we can negotiate with them. I spoke at length to Peter Masters this morning. He is also going to be on the public hearing this evening in case there are questions. But just to bring everyone up to date on their timeline, if this goes forward, and potentially if it doesn't go forward, but I'll talk about that in a moment, they plan to close on November 18th. Once they close, they plan to then work with their engineers to develop the plans and start implementing what they will need to apply for permits. They're expecting to apply for their special permit late January with the goal of starting work on their facility the end of April. This first phase, all the work will entail is renovations to the existing buildings, the main building and then the back building, and the construction of, I believe he said, 2 turf fields. That is it for the first phase. There are no ice rinks, there are no field houses, there are no additional buildings, there's nothing else going in. We talked hypothetically that potentially 5 years from today, they could be looking at the ice rink and possibly the field house. Their plan is to get to September of 2023 when they would hope to be open for the first school year. See if they've met their mark at 200 students. If they have, they can then regroup, go back to their investors and say, these are the students, this is what they want to major in, now let's figure out what the next phase is, whether that's an additional field, a field house, an ice rink, etc. They have increased their estimate as to what they plan to invest in the property. It's now up to about $35 million versus the 28 that we originally planned. What that means for us is, so if they stay for profit, not only do we continue to receive the tax revenue, which they are currently the second largest taxpayer, second only to Linear. With that type of investment, they would undoubtedly become the largest taxpayer in town. Their assessment would be based on that, plus the value of their upgrades, and because they would be for profit, a value of their collected tuition. So we are talking significant increase in revenue to the town. And when you look at the way the tax rate is set, you have a dollar amount you need to collect, and then you factor in the large assessments, and then everything else is apportioned to the rest of the assessments. Undoubtedly, the tax rate will go down for the tax rate impact will be decreased for every other residential property in this town, should the Masters Academy come in town. Obviously, values may increase with the property like this in town, but the tax rate will have a decreased impact because of the value that we're adding with with Masters Academy. So that is an absolute fact. That is not a myth. Taxes will go down. The tax rate will go down if that happens. Now, if the vote does not happen, and if the zoning change does not happen, a couple of things will come out of that. The Masters Academy could very likely become tax exempt. That's a legal right that they have to become a tax exempt agency. And as I mentioned, they would then go in there, they could petition the assessors to be tax exempt and no longer pay real estate tax. They would not need to follow the zoning under the Dover Amendment. They do not need to negotiate a development agreement. They can, in essence, put what they want, exactly what they're planning currently, and we do not get the same benefit than if they were staying for profit on a number of levels. Another thing that could happen is they could decide they're going to walk away from this site. They could walk away. Bose would have to go back out and find a new buyer for that site. We know for a fact that they were approached by a distribution organization. It is an industrial use. It is already zoned for that. We will have zero say if an Amazon, a Walmart, if one of those distribution warehouses wanted to go in there, it's already set for it. That would obviously impact traffic. It would impact noise. It would just, no one wants to have 18-wheelers up and down the roads all day long. The other thing that we could see is a 40B development. And with the size of that site, you're talking, it could be a massive 40B development. It could be apartments, it could be units. could be a combination of such. Obviously, large 40B developments that are not friendly 40Bs have a significant impact on the school district. They impact town resources. And again, we do not get the benefit of having them fund additional police and fire to accommodate the multitude of residents that might then be at that location. So those are legitimate concerns that if this zoning does not happen, what could take place there? People have been concerned, we've heard a lot about what if we vote for this zoning change and then we approve it and then they decide to go nonprofit? Well, I mean, a couple of things. They wouldn't, because that's not their goal, that's not why they're doing this. They wouldn't have to go through this process. But we could certainly, if they start out as for-profit, we negotiate a development agreement, we could certainly put benchmarks in place, excuse me, to address that. We could require that they remain paying taxes, because you have to petition the Board of Assessors to become tax exempt, so we could put in a development agreement that they would have to maintain their taxable status. We could put in there that if they choose to go nonprofit, we would implement a payment in lieu of taxes in the same amount of what they would be paying on taxes. So that the town would still be made whole. Again, this is provided they start out for profit and the zoning change happens. I would say the school is still very much excited. They want to be part of this community. We talked a lot about the students, the concerns with security. They plan to have 24-hour security on site. They plan to have Friday and Saturday curfews. They haven't worked out whether or not they will allow students to have cars on campus. What they've said to me is they are gonna follow the makeup of all of the other private schools. They pointed to Lawrence Academy, Cushing Academy, Phillips Academy. If Phillips Academy, Cushing, and Lawrence Academy have curfews, they're gonna have a curfew. They said they're not trying to reinvent the wheel. They're not trying to have a leg up on the competition so more students come here than go to their programs. There is a standard for what is expected of private schools. They plan to maintain that same standard. If there are open campuses that allow the public to enjoy the grounds during the day when school is in session, they plan to allow that here. They would love to have people walking around and enjoying the outside and seeing the kids practicing. But again, because they don't have formal plans at this point, they're still working on those things. But they are very open to having conversations with us, working with us, and following the private school model. He encouraged me to talk to the town of Ashburnham, the town of Andover, the towns of Groton, to see if there has been any negative impacts from these private schools being in town. I'm not far from Phillips Academy, I actually walk through there frequently. There's never an issue, you never hear about kids running amok. It's very structured. These kids are, it's an hour of conditioning in the morning, then they have some other routine, then they go to school, then they have 5 hours of practice. It's an all-day affair for these students. So the notion that folks will be out and causing trouble in town, more so than a public school student, to me is just ridiculous. I've heard a number of things in the last week, whether or not they can have a screening process, whether or not they'll make sure that there's no criminal backgrounds on these students. Folks that think that people from other countries are gonna send their screwed up rich kids here. It's just not the reality. So I just encourage folks, we've put information on our website relative to the zoning change, because that is what we are talking about on Saturday. Right now, everything else about the Masters Academy is hypothetical based on what we've been hearing. Until we have formal plans and we start a public hearing process, we will put all of that on our website. Everything will be accessible. As I said, we'll notify abutters when we need to, but that's why the information is not out there, because we're talking about zoning. We're not talking about a project. So I encourage folks, if you're interested, I would encourage folks to vote for the zoning change just to entertain these discussions. If at the end of the day the permit doesn't pass, we haven't lost anything. We've given it a go, we've tried to make it work. For some reason it doesn't. At least we've gotten to that point. So I will digress a little bit on that one. I do want to set the record straight about some comments that were floating around. As an accusation that myself and others should not be involved in these projects because we do not live in town. So first off, I would just like to say that anyone who thinks I operate in a vacuum is crazy. My job is to make recommendations, my job is to provide information. You are the decision makers, town meeting are the decision makers, the planning board are the decision makers. The staff here, we do the work behind the scenes, but we have no decision-making authority. We are not negotiating one-on-one with these folks sitting at a table. My job here, and has always been, in the best interest of all of the residents of the community I work for. And I really do believe that the Stow Acres project and this Bose Masters Academy is truly in the best interest of the towns and all the residents. I think both of these projects positively impact the majority of the residents in this community. I think that we've already gone over the Masters Academy and the outcomes of what could or could not be with that going forward. I'll touch just briefly on Stow Acres. I think we all know the impact that has. That should the town not purchase and protect the majority of the North Course, we will have a full-scale development in there. People are concerned, people are all up in arms at 189 residences that includes senior housing and small one-bedroom cottages. Multiply that by 3, 4, 5. You could have an apartment complex on the North Course. You could have a full, 40B complex. You could have mansions put in there. You could have a whole myriad of things if we do not protect the North Course, the majority of the North Course. Either way, that would dramatically change not only the landscape of the community, but the neighborhoods there. Folks are concerned about traffic with 189 residents, talk about 400 homes and what that would do to that area, what that would do to Gleasondale and the ancillary traffic coming in. I think, is it a lot of money that we're paying? Yes, it's community preservation funds that have already been collected from folks' taxes for this specific purpose, to protect open space, to protect the community, to preserve what we have as our natural resources. And you could not get more clearer than preserving a property like Stow Acres. So I will leave my comments at that for the evening. I apologize for getting passionate about this, but I feel that the information that's been circulating, it's misinformation, it's clouding and muddying the waters, it's taking away from the fact that the vote this weekend is zoning vote only. People that are trying to use scare tactics and scare people away from what the project truly is or what the vote truly is, I ask everyone not to listen to that. Do your own research. We've put things in the paper. I have another press release that went out today that's on our website about the town meeting articles, specifically focusing on Article 5 and 8 and the truth behind it and not the inaccuracies. I think these are two such huge and important votes for this community that I really do think, again, I think it has nothing but a positive effect, and not moving ahead with either or both of these projects would just be detrimental in the long run. So I will leave my comments at that for tonight.
Thank you. And to the people who are concerned that you shouldn't be involved in this, I would just say we are incredibly lucky to have you, especially with this project with the Masters Academy, that you jumped on it, you started talking to them right away, so we didn't lose an enormous opportunity. So incredibly grateful for your leadership on this, and we know that we have a role in this to play, but we couldn't do it without you. So let's just be clear on that. So, yes, Jim.
Could I add a few things? Feel free to say no if you want to keep moving along. I'm a little worked up about the whole thing too. All right, thank you. A couple of points from the various letters that I've seen. There are some false assumptions and some false facts out there. I'm just going to pick a few of them. Number one, there have been some comments that not enough information was in the warrant. I think that misapprehends what the purpose of the warrant is. The warrant isn't supposed to be a manual to all issues that will be discussed with arguments pro and con. The warrant is a simple document that puts you on notice of the questions that are going to be addressed at the town meeting so you can make up your mind whether or not you want to go. The information that, on which you will make up your mind, hopefully pros and cons, will be presented at the town meeting, the discussion, the debate. Second, there was a lot of talk about transparency. I personally feel that that has always been a bit of fake news in this town. This is not a town where people go to bars afterwards in a quorum and there are towns like this, and a quorum of boards get together and they really run things. As far as I know, for as long as I've been on this board, there are no substantive discussions among a quorum of any board, in particular this one, on anything. But in the past year and a half in particular, since electronic communication has gotten much better, and our last town administrator would be the first to admit he was no good at electronic communication. Our packets are now online, and I think I can truthfully say that the members of the public are seeing information at the same time I am, maybe even ahead of me. And there are no substantive discussions of any kind that aren't taking place in public. We have members of the public who attend on a regular basis, ask questions, and some of the comments made seem to think that our meetings are really press conferences, that our job is to answer questions from the public. They're meetings, they're just like any meeting at any other place of business. What makes them a little bit different is that the public has a right to attend, watch, and listen. Through courtesy and courtesy alone, the chair lets members of the public ask questions and make comments. To the point where some members of the public, I think, speak as much or more than any individual member of this board. There is no lack of public participation. And finally, to the point where I had to laugh at this one, the criticism that the town administrator doesn't live in town. It would be select board malpractice if we had gotten together last spring of 2020 and said, we're gonna limit our search to the people in this town. I don't know who we would have wound up with, but we would not have wound up with someone as good as Denise. That has never been done in any position in this town, certainly not the position of town administrator, and it shouldn't be. You want the best person available. And you don't want somebody in town because perhaps they're just a little bit too close to those issues. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Jim. Let anybody else wanna?
No, I think everyone said everything I wanted to say.
Okay, Dan, we're gonna put off your discussion we're waiting for Laura to join us. She had a parent night at school, so I hope you're patient.
I'm here.
Oh, you're here.
I'm here.
Oh, you're still
She's
Zoom.
on Zoom.
Okay,
I'm
awesome.
here now.
All right.
Thank you.
Great.
Denise talked long enough for me to be able to. Thank you.
Glad I could help, Laura.
Well, great, okay. So we are, to review where we were we did have a discussion, last meeting, and thank you, Laura, for joining us, because I think we had some questions about it. So this is to sign off on, Dan Nicholson being a special municipal employee, as well as a member of the Recreation Commission, in order to do some work for the Recreation Commission. So, I guess I would start, if you could, Laura, just talk about how you've done this in the past and how it works, sort of separating the two roles.
Sure. So the last time we did this was when John Sandramano was on the board, and that would have to be about, 5 or so years ago. And basically how it came about is there's projects that need to get done that are beyond the scope of my maintenance person, but just don't meet the immediate need, I would say, to go out and hire somebody and then pay prevailing wage and this, that, the other thing. So John would propose a project to the rec commission, we would review it and then either agree or make changes and then allow him to do the work.
Great.
So basically, that's the bottom line of what I'm asking for, what Dan's looking to do.
And in terms of the sort of separation of the roles, so he would just be reporting to you with these tasks that you guys agree that he's gonna work on, separate from anything that would come up to the full Recreation Commission, is that right?
Yes, unless there's something, that I felt that the rec commission, would have a say in. When I guess, for example, if Dan was doing, I don't know, building me a sign for something, and we wanted to talk about colors, then I bring it up to the rec commission and say, what does everybody think? Do we want to go with these same colors, so forth? And then Dan would just abstain from the vote at that point.
Jim, you had questions particularly last time. Do you have anything specific?
Hi, Laura.
Hi, Jim.
I'm still having a hard time understanding what kind of projects wouldn't be appropriate for the regular maintenance crew and that you wouldn't want to pay the regular wage on and that Dan would do.
So I first should say that maintenance crew is a little bit of a overstatement. It's more of the custodial staff that I have down at the beach.
Yeah.
So, they don't have a lot of hands-on experience. We're talking, teenagers or early 20s. The person that I have working for me doing the custodial work and some small maintenance tasks. So I guess for an example would be like revamping the rafts or revamping the docks or something like that. Instead of replacing, Dan could come in and restore those types of things. We have a dumpster that we used to have it enclosed. The last kid that I had do it, now it's collapsed. So maybe just the quality would be a little bit better if Dan was doing it.
And about how much do we think we're gonna pay Dan, let's say in a given fiscal year?
I would say probably no more than, I just don't hold me to it, but $5,000 throughout the year.
And I take it there was no competitive process or anything like that for this, right?
No.
Okay.
No, Dan approached me about it. Dan's been basically an overseer of Pine Bluffs because he's so close and he's passionate about the lake and that area that he's always come and helped. He just recently helped us get the rafts out of the water and such. So he's always been around to help, and now that he has a little bit more time on his hands, he wanted to do some things a little above and beyond that he feels like he should get paid for.
And was John paid?
Yes. He'd do some things, but then when we did larger projects, he would get paid for it.
Last question, if you didn't have Dan on the board, how would this work get done?
I would either have to hire it out or it hasn't got done. Like I said, some of it is just aesthetics, some of it's just I don't have time, and some of it's just I don't have the ability to do it outside hiring out outside company to do it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Do you have anything to add?
I do not.
Can I say something?
Sure.
So I think I'm gonna vote for it only because it's de minimis. But I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like it for a couple of reasons. This town has an unfortunate history of not filing disclosure forms just like this. Our fire department on a regular basis for years, it's a tradition among all fire departments to hire relatives. And even have relatives supervising relatives, fathers supervising sons. No disclosure forms. We gotta get better about that. And I don't like this because, it sure looks to the outside like a board member taking advantage of his position. How do we know he would have been the guy hired to do this if he weren't there at the board meeting saying, hey, Laura, I can do this. Now, I'm gonna get over all that because it's $5,000. And because I think he's complying with the basis of the conflict of interest laws, which is they're disclosing and telling us about it, so we have the ability to say, as I'm doing, I don't like it, but on the whole, I'm gonna say okay. But, just me talking, Laura, I I don't like the way this looks. And I think hiring a board member for money should be the last thing you do, not the first. You know, like when you post a position and absolutely no one applies and the work has got to get done and a board member has the skills and the time to do it, okay. I do appreciate this disclosure though, because like I said, you know, it's more often than not, it hasn't been done. I appreciate you doing that. So I think I'm on board, but not happily.
Okay,
I did talk to John San Germano about it since I've known him forever, and he actually did fill out the paperwork. Whether or not it ever came to the board is another question, but
Yeah.
he said, oh no, I definitely signed the special employee thing.
yeah, he definitely did. He went through the process, and so did Dan. I mean, I went to Linda Hathaway, and she told us the process, and then we went to Denise, and
Yeah.
then came in front of you. But I definitely didn't come in front of you for John's. I don't know if it just got lost in, you know, transition or something, but
Okay.
and I understand your point, Jim, as well. You know, Dan did approach me, but he's not asking for anything that he hasn't been asking me to do for a while as far as these few projects that he'd like to get done. It's just, you know, there's only so much time and so much money. You know.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, like I'm saying, it's de minimis. I don't want to lose Dan from the board over this. I can get over it, but if it were much more than $5,000, I probably would not go for it. So
Yes.
Yeah, so I agree with Jim in that I'm going to move forward on this because I think it's fine. However, I do think for me, this raises a bigger question of budgeting and what projects, I mean, if these are projects that are going to be on a yearly or every couple of year basis, if it's things like repairing the rafts, if it's things like whatever, I do think that that needs to go in a budget. And that you have the ability to hire out or figure or however else. I don't want to be relying on volunteers that we pay. I would feel a lot more comfortable if we had some kind of a competitive bidding process that was outside of just sort of somebody raising their hand and saying, oh, I'll do it and I'll get paid. So I would feel more comfortable with that in the future. But again, I think this is, for me, fine.
Yeah, I'd just like to be clear that I will follow all procurement as far as anything that's, you know, if Dan comes to me with a, you know, $5,000 project, I'm not just gonna hand it to him. You know, I
Right.
wouldn't anyway, but, you know, I know what the process is for, you know, things over $500, $5,000, $10,000, so, we wouldn't go there. But those type of things.
It's Dan here.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify, yeah, I'm not talking about Laura's big things. In fact, she's already got crews in place for big projects. She's got the highway doing rafts, by the way. I don't know if you guys know, you know, the yearly procedure is to use highway department, to use, you know, landscaping companies. I'm not touching those projects at all. And to Jim's point, you know, it was not brought up. I didn't raise my hand in a rec meeting. The rec meetings, you know, are about vision and big decisions and hearing public concerns and Eagle Scout projects. And I talked to Laura when I walked into Laura's office, I was not wearing my rec commissioner hat. I know that I still am overlapping as a board member on things, but Laura's gonna tell me what the projects are. I'm not.
if I could just say, Dan, you didn't do anything wrong, and you did what had been done before, and you did this form, which is the big thing. Frankly, the process that I'm talking about, this formal, like, you know, get quotes, you know, put it out for bid, it would protect you so that nobody could ask the kinds of questions that I'm asking. It would all be there would be a formal process for this.
Exact, that's
But-
just how I pictured it, yes.
Right, but, you know, like I said, I personally am over my concerns because of the de minimis amount of money, but in the future, I would appreciate a little bit more process.
I would expect we also get probably more out of the volunteer / part-time worker than we would from someone off the street. I'm just saying, based on John and Dan. Dan's been out there managing, watching my bluff because he's a neighbor for a long
Right.
time. So. Okay, I will take a motion.
I move to approve and authorize the chair to sign the special municipal employee disclosure form for Dan Nicholson.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Laura, for coming tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Alright.
All right. Okay, so next is on the Collings Foundation American Heritage Museum Settlement Agreement. I just wanted to start by saying that, again, as Denise has been here a year, and this has been going on for years, and we have seen how much time Denise has put into it and our town attorney put into it, especially during this last round of mediation. Just to be clear for the public that the select board met with the ZBA members to talk with both our attorney, Denise, and including the judge who ran the mediation sessions, which had a big impact on, I think, how we felt about the settlement, that we saw it from someone else's eyes, that if we went to court, which was quite likely if we didn't sign this agreement, that we had a really good chance of losing the case. And if we lost the case, we'd lose all control, sort of similar to some of the other things Denise was discussing earlier. And, 7 days a week, 365 days, planes could be going up and down at Collings Foundation. So it's not perfect, there's definitely compromise, but we felt it was a very good, given the years of litigation and discussion, that we're confident this was a good decision for us to sign on to this agreement. So I don't know if anybody else had anything else they want to say. We do have two to-do items on it, but anything people want to add about the agreement? Yeah, go ahead, Zach.
I just would like to add that everybody in the discussion had the safety of town residents and the nuisance to town residents at the top of our mind. And it was a tough vote for, I think, everybody, because there wasn't a perfect solution, as you suggested, and the consequences of going to court would have rendered no control, especially over safety, let alone over nuisance. And so, for me at least, it definitely centers on what is in the best interest of everyone in this town. And again, I want to say to Denise and our town attorney, y'all did a great job really ensuring that those two themes were front and center in this agreement, and I hope people read it in that spirit and understand what that is. And then the last thing I would say is, I sincerely hope the Collings Foundation follows it, because I know that has obviously been an issue that's continuously raised. It was really entered into in good faith, and I sincerely hope that there's recognition of what this means to the town and to folks, and that continuing this moving forward is not in the best interest of neither the town nor of them. That we really need to be learning how to work together and communicate with each other and try to make sure that we're safe and thinking about all of our neighbors. So I just wanted to add that to your comment as well.
Thank you. And I will add that it is a sort of an extraordinary museum, and we hope we can use this as a sort of stepping off for a better relationship and supporting the great programs they do have. The museum is there, but that we can be partners in that going forward. So the two things that we need to decide tonight, one is to establish the designee for a lot of the notifications, to make, there's one person with, the select board can designate someone, and I don't want to be that someone. I would suggest it makes sense that our town administrator be that someone, for the various notification requirements, I think comes up in a few different places. So I guess that's my first question. Does anybody have any other suggestions besides Denise? Anybody want to volunteer? No?
I think it makes sense for continuance.
It should be someone with an
It should be
actual
someone,
office in
yeah,
the town
for sure.
building.
Yes,
For sure.
Yeah.
right, yeah. So would you like to make that motion, Mr. Salvi?
I move to establish the town administrator as designee for settlement requirements for the American Heritage Museum Collings Foundation settlement agreement.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. And then the other is there's been a suggestion for the third-party expert to advise, whose name I didn't write down, James Rollison. And I asked Denise, sort of, how do we evaluate this person? But I will let you speak to that.
So, quite frankly, when we talked about this in mediation, we didn't really discuss how we would agree to this party or what requirements they would need to have. We just wanted to make sure that the town had a say in who was selected to do this. You have the resume this did come from Collings Foundation. I did research this individual. I will say that I can confirm most of what's on the resume by what I was able to find through basic internet searches. He has been an expert witness a number of times for aircraft manufacturers. He does do safety training on World War II aircraft. He's been a pilot for more than 46 years, I think 30 of which are at FedEx. So I think the role that he would have, or anybody in this role would have, would be to come in and really discuss with me what we should be looking at as far as safety measures. Develop a checklist so that one of the requirements of the agreement is that every aircraft and every pilot we are required to obtain safety information on. So I could then take those reports, look at the checklist that we've put together and ensure that there is compliance with FAA standards, with safety standards, with NTSB requirements, which, as Zach mentioned, safety was paramount to our conversations over a number of days mediating. So it seems to me that this person has the qualifications that could work with us. He does a number of safety trainings that I think we could certainly get what we needed from them. Full disclosure, it's on here, he does work for Collings Foundation.
Right.
He is a volunteer pilot with a number of their planes. He does do one of the safety trainings is at one of their locations. I don't know if it's in town or not. But I don't know how many other foundations, businesses in the country have the type of aircraft that are being used here that someone could specialize in. So I think because it is such a unique list of 16 aircraft, we should be speaking to someone that is at least familiar with those, on top of being able to talk about the safety requirements and both NTSB and FAA standards and requirements.
Any questions?
So my question was, because we say this is a third-party specialist, and if he's doing work for the Collings Foundation, how do we have an assurance that he can remain objective?
Well, so I think his role is not necessarily to remain objective because he's not gonna be certifying these safety documents. That's gonna be put on me, he will be giving me the information that I can interpret these reports to make sure that they are compliant. I think for us, we were more concerned that it was not Bob or Rob sitting down saying, yes, we meet all the specifications. So while he does work with them, I can certainly find out if he is a paid employee of the Collings Foundation. It mentioned volunteer work on a lot of his things for them. I agree. I don't know that we would be able to find somebody out there on our own that could do this kind of work for us. So I think anyone is gonna come through them as a recommendation.
Yeah.
Jim?
So I take it you haven't talked to him?
I have not, I did not wanna reach out.
So I'm wondering if, rather than us making the final decision tonight, if it doesn't make more sense for us to authorize the town administrator to retain him, after an interview of sorts. The man's qualifications speak for themselves. I get the point. This is a small universe. It's probably unreasonable to expect someone in this universe who's never had any contact with Collings whatsoever. I think the real answer to Ms. Fraser's question is, Denise has to have a conversation with him
Mhm.
and ask him point blank, so why can I trust you?
Right,
Um,
right.
So I've just made that suggestion.
I would second that.
In the paragraph that talks about having the expert, that also talks about having, that the pilots and aircraft are being inspected by an independent third party, but that's a different,
Yes, so that is a requirement under FAA.
that's different, okay.
Quite candidly,
wouldn't
the
be in.
concerns we brought up with that was the unfortunate plane crash that happened in Connecticut.
Right.
The NTSB mentioned that the FAA had not performed their safety requirements, which is why we felt that we pushed for us to physically see them so that we can confirm that they were being done by the FAA and by whoever was required to do these safety inspections, because we wanted the reassurance that if anything or anyone was flying in or out of that location, we could rest assured that we've done our due diligence on our end.
Right, okay. Yes.
I love your suggestion about talking. That was gonna be my suggestion after reading it. When I removed the Collings Foundation connection from the CV though, I just think that this is a really informed person of having done air shows. I mean, working at FedEx for as long, seeing the work. I was actually very impressed and was thinking this would be a great person, but it's just that connection of what can we trust you? So I completely agree. So to me, it was, yes, I'm all the way there except for that question. And so, you know, I'd love to take Mr. Salvi's suggestion and maybe make that our action too.
This sounds like that's, we don't need to take a vote on that, we'll just postpone that vote.
Well, I can,
Or do you wanna make a motion?
I can
Okay,
make a motion.
cause you wanted to authorize her,
Yeah,
yes, okay, go for it.
Madam Chair, I move to authorize the town administrator to retain James H. Rollison as a third-party expert to advise and educate on federal and state safety regulations and requirements.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alright, that's unanimous. Alright, great. Alright, let's see, okay, so next is a discussion on liquor license requirements. So I think I had raised this at some point, and I don't remember exactly when, that I was surprised our liquor licenses don't require any kind of training. When I worked in Framingham and had a venue that served beer and wine, we had to have everybody who was gonna serve beer and wine have tips training, and then we also had to have actually the crowd management training as well. So we did get feedback from the police chief that he supports that idea and actually was asking about crowd management as well. At the very least, for me, I mean, given what we know our population is right now in terms of the businesses or the entities that hold licenses, they're small, they're not a lot of staff, so I would like to see at least that we add that the management of every, whoever owns the license is responsible for getting whatever the appropriate kind of training is. It can be, it's tips training if you're a server, there's what's the other one called? BAT, yeah, the beverage alcohol training if you're a store manager kind of thing. Cause I just think it's, public safety wise, it's just something we should be thinking more about. Not that, knock on wood, we haven't had trouble as far as we know. And if we had, the police have kept it quiet, but yeah.
Well, I do think it's important, I'm glad that you brought this up, as someone who used to be a server, I'm shocked that we don't have tips training requirements. And I do think that it's important to get this policy in place because hopefully we will be expanding our businesses in this town in the next few years. And so it would be great to sort of set this as the ground floor moving forward, so.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, Denise.
So my suggestion would be if you choose to implement this, the renewal packets have to go out by the end of this week. They are required by law to be back by November 30th. I don't think it is realistic to have businesses comply now.
Right.
But we could certainly say that if with every license that's renewed, you have until June 30th or some date to provide us their certification.
That's, I was gonna suggest March 31st, just cause it's almost, I think all of the training is now available online, so it's really easy and it's all, you run it by yourself and just do it, it's a 45-minute thing or something. I wouldn't say those are the best trainings. I had to go through like a 4-hour in-person tips training, but you know, I learned a lot, so. But yeah, and I mean, my suggestion would be to say that at this point that we ask the manager of every entity that holds a license to be trained. And I wasn't sure, I mean, the chief had asked about the crowd management training. It's usually for over 100 or even 200 people. I don't know that that's something it's, because the idea, if people aren't familiar with it, they're the ones responsible for making sure, you know, exits are clear, the things are marked. I mean, it's sort of tied into fire code and building inspection, and that was my sense that we didn't need to do that yet.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, so I read up on it this afternoon. So it is the fire department and the building inspector when they do their safety checks that would determine. But there are exempt facilities, which are any facility that's used for a private function, which takes out several of ours. Any facility with fixed seating, which would be our restaurants. And occupant load of the facility with no less than 15 square feet per occupant, which I think would be Honey Pot, having their beer tent in a wide open space. So I don't know that any of them, I think they all meet the exemption of the liquor licenses, the serving licenses that we have in town. We certainly can talk about it, we can, you know, it would have to be required if anyone doesn't meet these exemptions. Primarily, those businesses that are designed or used as a nightclub, dance hall, discotheque, or just a straight bar.
Right.
Obviously, this came into play after the Station nightclub. So I don't know that any of our businesses rise to the level of this type of requirement.
Yes.
Seems to me like this might come up when we discuss an entertainment license and policies like
Yes.
that.
Good point. That would be.
I'm wondering if it would not seem unfair to start with having the management of businesses that are purveying or selling alcohol to be certified, but to look maybe in the future to having any individual that's going to work directly with the public. I also went through tips training at one point, and I think that it's really important to know when a person is too drunk to be given another drink. You know, and so if you're selling beer in a liquor store, you know, I don't know what the requirements are, but it might be in everybody's. I mean, I would think it would be in the interest of the business, and maybe we don't need to legislate that, but it
Well, and
doesn't
some
seem-
insurance companies require it, so it could be that some of our, like, the liquor stores might already require it of their staff.
And I think the draft that I put in there would cover most of that for the time being.
Yep. Right, yes, Mr. Salvi.
I think it should be beyond, I'm very gratified that you brought this up. I think serving, a license to serve liquor is a responsibility, and it requires a certain amount of at least minimal training. I can't imagine this would be too onerous for any of our businesses.
$40, I just looked it up.
Right, well, or the time required. I would urge that we do the tips training beyond just the managers, if that's what Ms. Fraser was suggesting, because unless you're gonna have the people actually serving with the training, it's not gonna be worth it. The manager can't be everywhere all at once,
Right.
on all shifts. Question, are we talking about this only for our actual Section 12 pouring licenses, or are we talking about this also for our occasional one-day liquor licenses? I would like to urge something similar there, but that deserves, I think, more attention.
Well, usually for serving
insurance,
alcohol
right?
for one-day licenses, a caterer would have to have a tips certification.
And if you have,
Someone has to be licensed to serve alcohol, you can't I can't serve alcohol.
So the way that it has been done here,
Yeah.
after much discussion, is, for example, let's say, well, this is on town property, which we do have a policy on, but it's the same thing. Let's say there's gonna be a neighborhood block party.
Yeah.
We don't insist on a caterer or someone who's tip certified. One of the parents is just serving drinks where alcohol is just generally available. Same thing has happened at like wine and cheese receptions at the library. Just, you know, we ask the chair of the library trustees, so you're gonna keep an eye on things, right? Yeah, sure, I'm gonna keep an eye on things. You know, I've advocated for something more formal like this, someone who's certified to be the server. I'm not sure we're gonna go there tonight.
I don't think we're going, because I think to Courtney's point, when we start dealing with the entertainment
Right.
policy, which maybe is the next one we start working on.
Can I
Go-
just
I'm sorry,
comment? So,
sure, Denise.
just a couple of things. So it's not really covered by an entertainment policy, because that's not what entertainment under the law is. I have a draft event policy that's been circulated to departments to get feedback before it comes to you. I'm working on a draft one-day liquor license policy, and I have a draft entertainment policy, but entertainment is clearly defined in the law as really amplified sound. We should be giving those, we are required to be issuing entertainment permits. And there's a specific permit for Sunday entertainment, which folks have complained about events that have taken place at Pine Bluff on Sundays that violate the law, and they do not have an entertainment license. So it wouldn't be covered excuse me, necessarily under an entertainment license, but the plan would be to have sort of these three: event, one day, and entertainment, that you start with the event permit. Based on what you check off, you'd either need a one-day license as well, or an entertainment license as well. So that's all sort of being circulated now to get some feedback.
Right, great. But, I mean, because I totally agree with you, it's really risky to start having, especially on town property, which is, as you said, you have a different policy on that, but, yeah.
And I think, for a block party, they could get around that by just standing in their front lawn. They're on their own private property serving alcohol. You can do that for your own party. It would really be if there is a public or private business that is serving and selling alcohol that you would need the one-day license. But we'll work on that
I mean,
anyways.
that goes back to the host responsibility, if somebody goes off and has an accident, whoever was serving the alcohol is liable, so.
I have a recommendation. I want to build on what you said about March. I would love to say by next renewal that all employees who are part of these, part of this set of licenses, restaurants or the package stores, are tip certified. So thus, by the next renewal, the employees are meant to be tip certified. And so, but I like your idea of getting managers first and doing that more quickly, and then sort of letting them get their employees over the next year, because again, I don't want to put a burden on them. I know getting employees is difficult, so making sure that we're being flexible still as they're trying to recover in this market with their employees, I think would be very helpful. But if it's $40 and they're the manager and / owner of the store, I think that makes sense that we're asking them to fulfill that requirement sooner than later.
I'd just like to amend that slightly, depending on the business. All employees might not be interacting with the public around alcohol, so busboy or, depending on the business, you might not have every employee need to have that certification. So I just wanna not put too big a blanket on it.
So I think the language that was proposed could easily be changed, that currently talks about the managers, and then it says all other employees of the licensed establishment, such as cashiers and waitresses who sell alcoholic beverages shall receive.
Yeah, I
Then we
actually
could just
like
change that from the language that was proposed to say must be tip certified by November 30th, and certificates must be included in the subsequent renewal packages or something.
That seems pretty targeted language. I mean,
Yeah, that's,
I
I'm fine with that.
I agree, you
That's
don't
great.
want
Yeah.
the kitchen staff to have to.
Right, because that's, especially with tips, it's always about the servers, it's not about just anybody in the.
I don't know if Zach even meant that, he might have just been.
Shorthand
referring to the
yeah,
language.
that's exactly what I was, but
Yeah.
I
I mean,
completely
my
agree.
only question was, like, if we're talking about, we have multiple package stores, do we still call them?
Package stores don't count because they're not serving,
But they have
They have to
licenses.
take,
But they have the
but
They have
no,
the
it has to be
VAT.
serving, yes.
yeah.
No, well, that's, we did include BAT in this, and
Yep.
I think even, that's, to me, that's just the managers, I'm not as concerned about the entire staff of a package store being all trained, but I guess we could say cashiers too, I guess they're still serving it, so, yeah, never mind.
I think
They-
it's just,
they-
that
they
teaches
have
them how to,
liability.
I would just think for liability's sake.
Yes,
you
well,
would-
that's the thing,
Right, cause
I'll go ask them
you-
tomorrow if they already have this, cause it could be
Yeah,
that they already
yeah.
do it. I would think that they got some risk involved. So, okay, so we're gonna use the wording that you presented in the packet with that minor change
Yes.
Take a
as
motion.
as
What is
requirements.
the minor change?
It was,
So I guess is the date November 30th?
Not within 30 days, but it's,
that we'll ask managers to be tip certified or, get their training by March 31st, and that by the next renewal period, all appropriate staff, as mentioned, it will be.
So by next renewal period and every subsequent year thereafter.
Yeah.
Okay, but managers by March 30th.
31st.
Yes.
31st. And are we including the language about BAT? Because that seems to apply to package stores.
Yes.
Yes.
And in the parenthetical in the draft motion, are we including special liquor licenses? I think that's the 1 days, isn't it? Or are we just doing the section 12s?
We don't want a special liquor license.
Right, not for the, right.
Sorry, I have another point to bring up as I'm reading this. Managers have to be recertified every 3 years. What about employees? Like, it's not, you're not gonna make them do it every year.
Right.
But is it going to?
No, but if they have someone new come on,
Right, but like, say you're somebody who's worked somewhere for 10 years, at some point you're going to need to get recertified, like, do we need to put in there
Well,
at
tips
that
cards are only good
point?
for 3 years.
right,
Oh,
I
okay,
think
then
their
that's fine.
certification is 3 years,
Okay.
but every year if they have, obviously, I would
New
assume a
people
lot of
coming
the
in.
ancillary
Right,
staff comes
right,
and
right,
goes,
right.
so.
Okay,
For any staff that's employed for the next renewal period, they have to provide their
Okay.
documentation.
So this wouldn't, we're not gonna address special liquor licenses. This is just for is it called section 12? Is that the group that the restaurants and package stores, the ones that we're talking about, the fees next, is that?
Yes, correct.
That's the section. So that, right, Jim, that's,
So, wait a minute, so it's March 31st for managers,
Yes.
within 1 year thereafter for other affected employees, is that right?
No.
By the
March
rule.
31st and by what year are we in? By the 2023 renewal period, which would be November 30th, is the legal requirement of renewals. So you can either say by November 30th or by the subsequent renewal year.
By the end of the subsequent renewal year for other affected employees. Do I have to say something about the renewals?
I would reference the language that's in your packet with the exception of that one change. That managers must be certified by March 31st, and then we can keep all the other language that's in there that references tips and BAT and their 3-year renewal.
So keep managers must become recertified every 3 years.
Yep.
And provide the town with an updated certificate. And I'll put in a special sentence about when this has to go into effect.
Yes.
Okay.
And we'll use the same, so it'll be managers and it'll just be all certifications must be renewed every 3 years. Because it's the same certification whether you're a manager or cashier, when you're taking the tips, it's the same certification.
And I'm keeping BAT.
Yes.
yes.
So let's give this a shot. Madam Chair, I move to set the following as requirements for holding a section 12 liquor license in Stowe. Namely, that for managers, employees of such establishments, the manager shall have successfully completed an alcoholic beverage server training program, such as training for intervention procedures by servers, tips, for restaurants and lounges, or beverage alcohol training, BAT, for package stores. Managers must become recertified every 3 years and provide the town with an updated certificate. All other employees of the licensed establishments, such as cashiers and waitresses who sell alcoholic beverages, shall receive, at a minimum, in-house training similar to that received under TIPS or BAT programs within 30 days of employment. All such certification and training requirements shall begin on March 31, 2022 for managers, and by the end of the subsequent renewal year for other affected employees. The employee training program shall include proper procedures for verifying that patrons are at least 21 years of age and not intoxicated. No.
Close. We need to strike the in-house training because we're requiring them all to be tips and BAT
That's
training.
what I was thinking too.
It's just a different date.
Shall receive tips or BAT training within 30 days of employment. Just take
Okay,
out that,
all the employees,
right.
got
Well,
it.
it says all other
After- We're not
places
saying
such
that
as cashiers and waitresses who sell alcoholic beverages shall receive, and just don't say at minimum.
Shall
in-house training.
receive the similar tips and bat training by the next renewal period and shall become recertified every 3 years thereafter.
So I amend my motion by striking out at a minimum in-house training similar to that received under TIPS or BAT programs within 30 days of employment. And substitute therefore, what am I substituting therefore?
Tips or BAT program training,
TIPS or BAT program training
by the next renewal period and subsequent renewal periods thereafter.
by the next renewal period or subsequent renewal periods thereafter.
Is that good?
Second.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or confusions?
Group effort.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, okay.
Thanks for bringing that forward.
Yep. That makes me feel better. Okay, so now we move on to the actual fee structure for this coming year. As noted in the packet, last year we cut everybody's in half because we knew business wasn't gonna be great. And I would have to say, who knows what business is gonna be like this year? Any thoughts on? Yes, Megan.
So I will bang my supply chain drum. I personally feel like I would like to keep the 2021 fees for one more year. I feel like we're not out of this yet. I feel like I don't know what people are going to be able to get to supply to be able to sell, which then means that their bottom lines are not going to be what they possibly could be making. That is my concern. I think the reason that we had cut it down was because we weren't sure what business was going to do with COVID, and now I just feel like it's COVID plus supply chain issues. And I feel like if we're talking about not changing or keeping the common vic one and keeping the auto sales one at what we were doing in 2021, then I don't want to penalize the other establishments. Sorry,
Yep.
that's my 2 cents on it.
So I just wanna clarify, in 2021, you only changed
Just
the
the
restaurants. You left the package stores at their
Oh,
full rate.
got it, okay,
Because we know the package stores, we're doing it pretty damn.
got it,
So just to clarify
you.
with what you're proposing.
Yeah.
got it.
So you're speaking to restaurants. in
So I'm
particular.
still speaking to restaurants, again, because of supply chain issues that I feel like we're seeing across the board. However, the only part of that is different is I don't know what the rules are anymore for takeout alcohol. And that's my question, if anyone knows, because that's the only thing that I would, I don't know. I feel like, are people back to going in restaurants as much?
The state of emergency is over, and I thought that was part of the state of emergency.
Right,
No, I believe they extended that under the provisions that are continuing until April. Because I know I ordered from the 99s a few weeks ago, and they still have takeout Mai Tais and things like that.
oh, okay.
So I believe that was extended until April with the extended provisions. Outdoor dining extended,
Got it.
some of those things were extended.
Thank you for doing that research in anticipation of our question.
Yes, anytime.
Mr. Burns.
I don't know.
I'd like to support what Ms. Birchbickle just said. I also think that we just added some
Right.
regulatory burden on these, maybe $40, but you know, with managers and everything, I think that all of that together says that we're supporting them in town, and so I agree. I'd like to revert back to the 1,100 for restaurants with all alcohol and 440 for the wine and malt at half the price for restaurants, knowing that we're adding that additional layer on top of this with the issue.
I agree.
I'm fine with
Yeah.
that.
All right, so I'm all in favor of that. Jim, you wanna make a motion?
Yep,
You're gonna change it to 1,100.
I'm just checking where the end of this motion is, yes. Madam Chair, I move that liquor license fees for 2022 be established at restaurants, all alcohol, $1,100. Restaurants, wine and malt, $440. Package stores, all alcohol, $2,000, right? Yes. Package stores, wine and malt, $880. I also move that common victual license fees for 2022 remain the same rate as charged in 2021, i.e. $25. And I move that Class 2 used auto sales license fees for 2022 remain the same rate as charged in 2021, i.e. $100.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, let's see, where are we now? We are on, the statement of support for Stow Acres. So, thank you, Zach, I had asked him to draft something that we could start with rather than trying to write something together, which never works well. So I would just say it's a little long, it's great, but in terms of, so there's multiple purposes here. One, we could post it as soon as we voted, and we could post it before the meeting, we could have it as a handout at town meeting, but I think in terms of what we would read, we might want a shorter version of it. I don't know if everyone got a chance to read it. Did you get a chance to read it? It was here when you got here, but there's not a lot of notice, so, but.
Yes, this is a PowerPoint presentation, a very good PowerPoint presentation. And I'm serious, I went through it with like an editor's like, what am I gonna take out? I can't take any of it out. You make all the right points. I just, having it in front of me like this, it's gonna be glazed over, so, yes.
Yes.
And so can I just, there will be a PowerPoint presentation on Article 5, the
Oh,
Stowe
yeah.
Acres. So I think what I would recommend is, really what the five of you feel are the points to hit on. I think clearly we, the 85% and the 326 acre golf course, I don't know that you need to go into, and which I would try and encourage you not to go into, the bullet point 2, because we are not talking about the development piece at town meeting. It is about the remainder of the property that we are trying to purchase. So I think, I don't know that you need to go into the details as much about the project, because that will be fully covered in the PowerPoint. I would talk, again, what you feel or why you feel this is so important to the town.
Yeah, I think, as someone said earlier, just that we clearly support the overall vision that has put that the effort that's gone into putting this project together, as our former selectman said, it's, the lifetime, or was project the century? And I think, that's core, but also, that what it's doing in terms of protection versus the housing development, I think, is, I could say all these things, but I also, I think if we wanna nail it down, what are the key reasons we wanna give as a select board? Megan?
Sorry, I also feel like it's important to really kind of call out the landowner on this, and that they are willing to work with the town is like something that is unprecedented for this big of a thing, and that all of the stakeholders have put together this package where everyone's going to be getting something good. We're not settling like we were for other things. It is something that is a beneficial package for the whole town. I think it's important to definitely call out that it's been a project, yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Question, is there gonna be the usual table with materials on it?
No, so there's no expectation of any materials being handed out.
That's true.
If I may make a suggestion, I would say, I think if you start with that opening 2 sentences, the underline 3 sort of, you could certainly expand on number 3 a little bit. But those 4 sort of underline sentences, and then your closing paragraph, which talks about the private landowners and wanting to work with the town in a collaborative future, I think really touches upon
Good point.
really everything you wanna cover. You've already expressed a unanimous vote, so.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
I like this, and I think Megan's comment that as an editor, she couldn't find anything to take out speaks volumes. because I had the same reaction when I read it, though I'm not really an editor. We've been accused in the past of either not saying anything about articles, or even when we do, it's kind of pithy and just the selectmen support Article 5 or whatever.
Right.
Here we have an opportunity to make a far more thoughtful statement. I wholeheartedly agree that it's too much to read unless we're going to tell the moderator that we want our own time slot. And it is gonna be largely repetitive, I believe, of what the main presentation is going to be. I'd like to suggest that we put this on our page, or even on the front page of the website. I think having this available to us is a rare opportunity to look thoughtful and considered. But then in terms of what the chair, and I assume it's the chair, actually says, I think your suggestion sounds
Yeah,
sounds
I think
great.
that's a really good suggestion.
Do we?
Except for that we
Question?
need to take out number 2, is that, I mean, I hear
No, I
some
think you
concern
could
about
mention
the-
it, but mention that we have no control over that, but that they're willing to build this village-style housing, something to
Because I
that
have to
effect.
say, I was confused, I thought that was all part of, that we were gonna then sell it to the developer, so I think, yeah, as long as we're clear on, if you can come up with that clarification or somehow to make it clear that that's a separate thing.
So Jim, let me get you, you're proposing we put the whole thing minus the second bullet point, or just literally all of this?
I think we can trust Denise to edit the
Tweak.
second bullet point, because I heard the conservation director has shared with me the same concerns. That is a separate deal, and she's gonna make that point. Although, you know, she was saying that we agree with the vision is certainly fine.
Right.
I think we can trust Denise to edit that appropriately, but then after that, I would suggest that the whole thing go
Yep.
on the
Yep.
front page of the website.
I totally would be good with that, and I like the suggestion also, the pieces that I can pull out to read will make it. Does that sound good? Thank you very much,
This
Zach.
is great,
I
Zach.
really appreciate
Thank
writing
you
it all
very,
down.
very
It's
much.
really great.
Figured more than less, because we could always.
That's right.
You can always trim back, that's the rule, right?
Yes, and I just wanna comment, so just about town meeting, so logistics, because we're doing the special town meeting, I'm not having you all sit up front facing the audience. I'm not having the finance committee all sit there. It'll be myself, Ellen, Erica, and town council, just because we're trying to deal with the table for the clickers, the table for the hearing impaired. It would be a little cramped right there, so you're all welcome to sit in the front row, but I think just in the front facing, so it would really just be Ellen, although you've already taken your vote, so this would really be the only thing that you would be speaking on behalf of the board. And then Erica, the finance committee's already taken all of their votes, so I don't expect her to offer any feedback either, but
Will Ellen just be making all the motions?
yeah, we
guess
can
so.
talk about that.
Okay. Well, no, I was just assuming if you're sitting up front, then that makes sense.
I get all the fun.
So the comment, I really like the idea of just taking this and putting it on the website, as you said. I did make a really quick stab at editing this so that we could make this so that we can discuss making this statement or an excerpt of the statement. And I don't know if that's appropriate, but
In terms of the specific, what I would read from this?
yeah, I mean, if
Yeah.
you know, maybe if you're sitting up front and we're not sitting as a table, that you, Madam Chair, are well in your rights to make, to speak
Oh, no.
at will from your heart or otherwise.
No, I was gonna
Don't
take
need
what
us to
Denise
vote on
had-
the script.
I was just gonna take what Denise had suggested in terms of, the first introduction piece, the underlined pieces, and then the part at the end around private landowners.
But I am ready to edit if you have comments.
Yeah.
So understanding that I also really like all your writing, so having edited a newsletter for a while, I'm stepping out on a limb that's a little creaky. I'm wondering if we could take the first paragraph and following conservation restriction on Stow Acres, south course, put a period and strike the rest of that sentence. And in the following sentence, strike from overriding the prior vote to the end. I
So-
mean, maybe this is too much wordsmithing for
Well,
current.
I guess.
I think so too, cause I think she's gonna have, sorry, she's
Right.
gonna have a very short period of time. I think if you just do the bullet points.
Yeah, because
Oh,
I was
just
just
the-
gonna
just
ask.
Just
Yeah,
the
titles.
sentences,
Sure,
the
that's
underlined
fine. That's
sentences.
Yeah,
That's great.
I gotta say, if the chair is gonna be the one speaking, I
She can do
trust
whatever,
her.
yeah,
I trust her to
fine.
figure out what she wants to say.
She's done great so far.
but I mean, I like going with basically what Denise had suggested, I think that's enough. And also highlighting that part of that last paragraph that really gets to what might not need, or what could be said multiple times, even if it's already been said, so.
It's beautifully said.
It's beautifully said, yes.
There's always this awkward thing, just a warning, at town meeting, when you stand up with something substantive to say and you're the selectman support.
Yeah.
Depending on whether the presentation has been made yet or not.
All right,
So you just have to, you might wanna coordinate with David. I always think the best is the presentations get made. And then the statements of support, because you don't have to define terms and fill stuff
Right.
in.
right.
But if you're the first one going or after the FinCom, it's like nobody knows what you're talking about.
So I'll check in with David, he's got his open hours tomorrow, I'll check.
Yes, so I just took, so I have the original one that will just add something under the second item, and then I just condensed that with the underlined statements, the opening paragraph and the ending
Great,
for you.
awesome. Perfect, thank you. And we don't need to vote on, because we already voted to support the project, and everybody's sense of the meeting is, we're good with this, right?
Do we have to vote to approve the statement?
I don't know, do you? I don't think so, but.
I'm just saying, cause there's a motion.
I mean, I would say yes, if we're posting it on the website as your statement, I would recommend you vote to
And there's a-
approve it and
there's a
post it.
There's a motion.
There's a draft motion, so, Mr. Salvi,
Madam Chair, I move to approve the select board statement of support for the Stow Acres project with amendments as suggested by the town administrator. Period.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, and thank you again to Zach.
Thank you.
And Zach, now you can tell us about this, the magic letter on ARPA funding.
Yeah, so you all have a revised letter that was left here.
And Zach's gonna tell us what varied from the last one, cause I didn't put them on top of each other, but I'm sure it
I
was,
used good lawyering skills of redlining
Yeah.
to see what was the difference. I just wanna make two sort of preliminary things.
Yes,
First
please.
being procedural of what the request was and how this came in and why you have a revised one today. And then second, about bringing this forward. I guess I'll start with the second one first, which is, I am not necessarily for this letter or for us approving this letter. I wanna make that clear. It was a request by Magic that we have, that each town take a look at this letter, because ARPA funding is obviously of great importance, and as we all saw yesterday with the state sort of announcing, at least one branch, one branch announcing what they would like to see in it, that this is a deep topic, and so Magic would like to weigh in. The process here was that we did receive this letter when I forwarded it about a couple weeks ago, then got an urgent email to do not approve that letter, there will be a new one coming, and at like 2 p.m. today, this came through. So just wanted to give everyone sort of the process of what this looks like. For all intents and purposes, what is new from the, in this letter from the draft that was circulated in our packet is that first paragraph, that the legislature should invest funds in a manner that advances local housing. That first paragraph through that second paragraph are really new. And that third paragraph that starts with the state should assume direct COVID mitigation costs, basically tracks the substance of the letter you reviewed. So that is what is new here. Obviously, that tried to include some additional information. I know there was a lot of feedback from towns and communities. I think that this was a potentially missed opportunity to not include some of the themes or concepts that our towns are trying to advance and fight for. And so that's, I think, was the impetus behind the change.
great, thank you.
I guess one final thing, Madam Chair, if I may,
Yeah.
is if we approve this, then I will need to let Magic know by November 3rd. So punting the signature of the letter is basically a non-signature, so I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood the deadlines that they have sort of set in place with our meeting schedule.
Yeah, I mean, having just heard the subcommittee came out with their recommendations, and it was disappointing, just that it's like, let's just put it in 3 million places and not have it focus of this incredible one-time windfall. I feel like they're missing an opportunity. I actually like the letter on some level, it's not particularly specific, but, transportation seems to, and infrastructure seems to be where we should be putting all this money when we're not gonna get this kind of money again, but, so I don't have a strong opinion either way. And I don't know if other people had, yeah, Denise.
Yes, a couple of things. I don't necessarily agree with the letter. I think the federal requirements for the towns and the way municipalities can use ARPA funds are very specific and cover much of what the letter states. The state ARPA funding, the funds that were given to the states to allocate out, has had a much broader purpose. So we were asked back in the spring by Representative Hogan to put together our wish list of projects that the state could potentially cover under the ARPA funds. And ours were things that we could not pay for ourselves through the ARPA funds, because we have a direct payment, the state has a payment. We have things on there, like the Sudbury Road Bridge repairs over the Assabet, Wheeler Road Bridge repairs over Elizabeth Brook, Great Road culvert design. We have several paving projects and repair work projects. The one that, as of today, that Kate Hogan plans to submit for us is the development and installation of 11 firefighting water cisterns at about $660,000 that our ARPA funds would not be able to cover. Based on this letter, that would not be covered by the state's funds. Now, do I think that having 13 smaller communities send a letter to the state is gonna change what they've now been planning on for 6 months? No. So if it's something that the board wanted to support in the nature of being a good community neighbor, I would be fine with that. But the priorities of the region don't necessarily align with what we're sort of working behind the scenes putting together, because I feel like we can cover so many more projects by using our own funding and then using what the state could potentially cover.
Because it talks about infrastructure, but it doesn't talk about, it's mostly talking about water and sewer.
Right, which is not
It's
something
not
we.
what, right.
I haven't
Yeah, I'm
parsed it.
sorry.
I haven't parsed it the way Zach did, but I like the first version better. It's just much more general about, the state should cover some, underlying basic COVID-related costs that municipalities will incur. This more specific and lengthier letter, while these individual programs may be worthwhile, I have not devoted enough thought to it to know that this is where I want ARPA money to go. For example, as much of a bike nut as I am, I don't know that I would put complete streets ahead of basic infrastructure, like all the bridges that we cross over that say 1922 on them and stuff like that. So I don't know that I'm really ready to sign on to something that specific.
I think I have a lot of your same issues with this.
Yeah, I kind of feel like there are times when if you ask for too much, you don't get anything. I wouldn't wanna do that.
So I'm not, I'm hearing a lack of enthusiasm. I'm fine with us just letting this go, and I don't know if we need to give magic feedback or just.
I think that, I think it was your sentiment in the packet, on the email, that I completely agree with, which is about how do we be a good neighbor and support Magic and really get involved, and I think this may be an opportunity for us to give feedback about how and what our needs are, and that you know our needs are actually slightly different than some of the needs we see here, and how we can work to better make sure that our needs are also integrated into letters like these, because we are also a community of magic and should have our, you know, just like Carlisle has their bullet point about not, you know, being reimbursed for all the costs incurred, straining their budget. You know, I think that maybe that would have been a better way to go about it, is we have, you know, we have 13 communities, we have 17 communities, we have these number of communities, and each one of them would like to make a statement to you, and they're doing it collectively to show what the needs are out here as part of our region. You know, I think that we do have an opportunity maybe to provide that feedback, because if the House plan, you know, is reserving $2.75 billion to be allocated at a later date, pending generally the infrastructure bill at the federal government, there is an opportunity for us to maybe say, you know, we would like our own needs to be addressed in a letter, and maybe we could try to connect them, you know, through with you of having made that list and worked with our representative and trying to make sure that our needs are met in town. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear too on this letter, is I did feel a little bit like it was missing the point, and then I loved connecting with you because it made me feel comfortable when I was reading this, that it wasn't where we were at and what we really needed as a town. But I think this is part of maybe us, you know, building up in magic and trying to be more vocal and making sure that our needs are also heard. As I think a lot of the themes match our community, but not necessarily the way in which or what we need in terms of the money. So that was my thoughts on it.
Okay, so we will let it pass, and I do think magic is, and in fact, I was talking to Jesse today, it's like, yeah, magic's the one that, as opposed to MAPC, is worth being present at, and that's where we might get some traction, but we can pass on feedback or not, but, okay. Okay, I think we are at, and I lose my minutes, our goals. So I sent some notes to Denise, who of course made them a little more clear.
This was all Joyce.
Oh, it's all Joyce, okay, yay Joyce, thank you Joyce. To sort of putting them in buckets that we can sort of focus on. And so the first one, update and create policies, which sounds like we've already, you're working on entertainment, you're working on the one-day liquor license policy. You said already circulating. Equipment and repaving policy?
Is that the thing I mentioned?
Yes.
Okay, I don't even remember that, oops. And then review existing policies, which I know Joyce has also got the book too, you guys have the book of the things. I don't know what the best way is to attack that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we will, right now, there are so many policies that are gonna be coming your way. I think Dolores
Chief
just
isn't
finished
here,
like
though, is
5 HR policies, Mike has a bunch of policies that have to come forward, so
Okay.
I think, you know, when it's quiet, we can certainly start looking at the older policies and readdressing them, but right now, we're gonna have a ton of
Okay.
policies coming forward.
Alright, so we won't worry about those for now. Okay, and then Lower Village, water issues and business issues, and I think, you know, the way that we're gonna keep this as sort of our goals is to sort of just stay on top with whoever's, you know, in the Lower Village subcommittee, you're still on that, right? And you know, keeping us up to date on what it is. I mean, you know, having those conversations with the state about, you know, what money might be out there and how we can tap into it. I think the business issues, I mean, things like cleaning up the bylaw, that's, you know, I mean, that's real for those people. And I did notice our used auto shop is up and running.
Yes.
Signs are up. I almost stopped in today, but I didn't have time, plus it was
I actually
pouring
had someone wanna find Infinite and be a customer to follow them wherever they went. I said, I don't know if they're still in business. I don't really know, but they were very disappointed that they left.
Well, I'm sure Infinite would be happy to hear that. So, I mean, you know, and I actually would love to have a conversation in terms of business issues with planning board sometime, whenever the right time is, just in terms of, you know, business policy priorities and just how we can work together to make sure businesses feel supported. a few that.
Lower village businesses or in general?
Well, I mean, it's really generally, I mean, because I mean, yes, most of our businesses are lower village, but there are a few that are not. But I think particularly as because I know that's a big part of planning board or planning department's issues is around lower village, and I think having more of a conversation might be helpful for us to know how we can support that effort, and especially with the bigger issues around, legislation or funding or whatever. Other thoughts on that? Are there lower village / businesses? In terms of steps?
Do you want feedback on all of this or just that
Well,
one
I'm right
section?
now, I'm just asking those two, or the lower village bucket. In terms of how I think we sort of quickly went over sort of how we might address the policies piece or where we're at with those, but with lower village sort of.
Well, okay. I have more of a holistic question
On the
about
overall
the
goals.
overall goals.
Okay.
So I can do that at the end.
Okay, yes.
I completely agree with what you just shared with regards to the business issues. I think both us and the planning board handle very heated discussions around these. And I think it's time for us to be looking ahead on how we build a town with good neighbors, where we build good forward-looking policies especially where business meets residential. That's where we see a lot of tension. And I think we would do ourselves a service there of trying to figure out together what our focus of that can and ought to be, especially as I think the lower village, subcommittee pushes forward in trying to get more businesses in and undertakes that. And I think because our two boards are the primary licensing boards for certain businesses, I like the idea of restricting it to us two while inviting in the other committees, EDIC and others who can truly come in and help weigh in on issues, right? Rather than being part of that, but it's really about how our boards can try to find some working together here, because their zoning and our license, these all go hand in hand in how we're handling issues. And a lot of planning issues sometimes could come up in our meetings, and then sometimes in their meetings they're talking about things we're in charge of, and I think that we would do ourselves a good service to try to just start talking about what these are, and I think letting a subcommittee actually try to work out what those are and then coordinate with the boards could actually be very helpful. So that's what I'd like to see, and to me that's a critical issue in town, because I don't see us in 5 or 10 years with a business plan without having addressed this concern of being a place where businesses feel like they can come to and know that we've removed red tape and know that we are engaging like we are on some of these other businesses. So I would love to see that. I think it's not necessarily a Lower Village issue. I think it's a broader issue than just Lower Village, and Lower Village being obviously an epicenter of one part of it.
Jim and then Megan.
Something, I was speaking to a member of the EDIC, and something is heading our way that they've done. I guess it is a draft. Recommendations for changes to the sign bylaw, maybe it goes beyond that. I don't know much about it. It was very vague. But maybe we should reach out to the planning department, just find out, is that really coming our way? That might be a chance to have that conversation.
I was just going to speak about the EDIC as well and just say that I do think that what I would like is to be able to lean a little bit more on them as the sort of middleman between the businesses and the planning and us. It's just they're coming at it from an economic development perspective. We are coming at it from and planning is from the zoning and the policy parts of it. They're like, how do we make you money? How do we make you solvent? How do we do this? And so I do think I would like to see a meeting of the minds there, because our EDIC is business owners. It's people who, have a lot to say, and it's a great committee, I think. So I would like to be able to have some conversations with them on that.
Do you think we should have them in separately?
I mean, I think, and Jim sat on the Lower Village Subcommittee with me. I do think that, and there's a lot of overlapping members, so it may be worth having a joint boards meeting with the EDIC, the Lower Village Subcommittee, if you wanted to bring in planning board, to have some kind of a joint conversation. I would wanna make sure that we have really specific things that we're all talking about, before doing that, and just figure out like what we're hoping to get out of that meeting. I've been getting a lot of emails lately about, Lower Village and what can we do to make it more aesthetically pleasing, and somebody said, I'd love to have these banners like they have in Maynard or wherever, and I was like, you should reach out to the economic development, because that's a great idea. That's something that they could possibly spearhead and figure out all the logistics on. Like there are these committees in town for the,
I think you're gonna hear though, from the EDIC, I haven't been to one of their meetings in a long time, that one of their main priorities is revision of certain bylaws. Certainly the sign bylaw, possibly the lighting bylaw.
anything that makes it harder to do business, I think makes sense.
Okay.
So I have a quick
Yes.
question about the, and I apologize if you've, talked about this in the past and I'm asking you to repeat, but, is the Lower Village, so where is the Lower Village Subcommittee, currently on the water issue? Is that in motion or in stasis or? I know that's a pretty big question.
Well, I think I'm thinking because there's like multiple different things that need to happen. And I think one of them was that we were working on, Jesse was trying to get a water feasibility study?
So my
Oh, sorry.
understanding of the Lower Village Revitalization Committee is they answer to the planning board on zoning changes only. They should not be involved in finding an answer to water in Lower Village, that's not their purview. That was a meeting with myself, Jesse, Ellen and Megan were there, we met with state legislators. But that would not be the purview, cause I've asked several times what the purpose of this Lower Village Revitalization Committee is, and it's strictly to make recommendations on bylaw changes to the planning board.
So it
And
just
correct me if
Sorry,
that's wrong.
no, it's not, it's just, I think, and the one thing that came out of that subcommittee was that really big report that you can find online that was really all of our recommendations that we worked with a consultant on to put together. So, yeah, it's not, certainly it came up at every single meeting as to what we could do and different avenues that could be explored, and I believe that a feasibility study has been proposed, if not is in the works, but I think, and we certainly had that conversation with state legislators about that it is something we would like to address, but I don't know.
that wasn't the Lower Village.
No, that wasn't
Right.
the thrust of it.
So I guess my question then is, as a goal for us, what are some next steps or what do we wanna look for to move it forward,
Right.
to move
That is
something
the real
forward?
question, right?
Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion on that?
Yeah.
Maybe the first step is, and I hate to add to the town administrator's workload, but I don't see any way around it, is to ask the town administrator to do some research and make some recommendations on the right vehicle for making changes downtown or in Lower Village. Some of the things that have been proposed in the past, public water supply, public or private water supply subsidized by the public, buying a parcel, doing something with it, they almost sound like a redevelopment committee. Which is often the planning board, but it can be something separate, I think. But I don't know that that's the right vehicle. I know the town on the Cape where we have a house recently bought 2 parcels and they're gonna redevelop it. How did they do that? I have no idea how they did that. How do municipalities, especially small municipalities, go about doing something like this? I would admit, I'm starting to think of the lower village needs some sort of concerted effort in
Yep.
that direction, but I don't know that that's a vehicle for doing that.
Yeah,
So you've already put it on my goals to work on the Lower Village
Right.
water
Okay,
issue.
well, see, there-
And yes, what I've said to Jesse and what we said in that meeting is step one needs to be, we need to have a sort of an engineering plan to even see if there is water capable of covering what is necessary down there. Until we even know that, there's not much else we can explore. So we are working on that. Jesse was going to put forward a proposal for funding of that. I can certainly follow up with him, but so that's why it's already on my goals. So I'm not sure how your goal, other than speaking to state legislators, attending sort of some of these meetings, encouraging business owners to work together and form their own little business coalition. Obviously, things like that can be done, but we really need to get a handle on what we're talking about. And then it would, in my opinion, have to be a much larger conversation, because even after just some of the smaller conversations we've had, I've gotten pushback from residents that live in other parts of the town saying, why would I spend any of our tax money to put water in a handful of businesses? Why aren't they paying for it? Why is my tax money or money that you're, in charge of covering what they should be doing on their own? I'm a homeowner, I had to put my own well in. The business down the street had to put their own well in. I think there's going to be pushback from folks in town that do not want town revenue dedicated to private businesses. So I think there will have to be a much larger conversation about what could be done and what should be done, and solicit some town feedback on that. And I still say at the end of the day, we are not gonna be in the water business. That would require so many more resources, a full water department. That is not something we wanna take on here.
Right.
So we will continue to explore it, but step one would be actually determining what there is for water.
Okay.
So, okay, so that's, I mean, I knew it was on your list as well, and but it did come up in our discussion too, so, but I think the business part of that discussion, that's not just Lower Village, we can still move forward on some more conversation with planning board. Yes, Zach?
I think what I would love, Denise, is what you just said to me is an argument. And I'd like to make sure that we explore that argument fully, because I think when we have residents on either side of that issue, making statements, and I go to a lot of what you said, but what's the cost, right? A lot of it's like, oh, that sounds really good until you start to break that down. And then you see it in paper, and I think that to me is where I think we could maybe step in and start to say, like, how do we structure this so that way we can show what that cost is? And then I think this board should, with the planning board, should be the ones making the strategic decision to say, this is why we're not going into the water business, right? Because I think that this board should be the one making sure it's clear to folks that they can understand why we're not going into it, because this is the extra part of the budget, this is what it looks like. And I know that, you've ran this down, but I think it's really important because this is such a hot topic and something everybody talks about in terms of how we're going to get more businesses in lower villages through water. Everyone says that to you, that's how we're gonna do it. Then let's talk about it and let's make it clear, because if we do look at that and people say, I'm willing to put money, I'm willing to make that happen because that's the direction that I want my town to go in. I think it's fair for us to make sure that we have evaluated that plan.
Right.
And again, I don't know if it's not necessarily disagreeing with you as much as saying, like, I think that's where we can come in as a board on this issue and make sure that we're getting all of that worked out and showing people, like, this is the plan if we wanted to go into the water business, and this is what it costs, and this is the extra department costs and everything, and you're voting on probably a multi-million-dollar package every year to get this done. And I think that's really important for people to keep in mind when they're looking at their tax bill and they're thinking about other projects that may have a larger impact in town. And I think then it does also put us in the position when we are discussing with businesses in the lower village of why we can't get into the water business, why, like, all of the requests from the town to do it, it's just not practical because this is what they're asking. And so I think it actually serves us really well in the discussions of trying to see how we can move that actually forward. And I know it's gonna probably be painful, tedious, full of vigor and debate, but I think that it may be one of the best things we can, as this board is trying to facilitate that actual discussion and running this down, so that way we have and can show to people how transparent we're being in the process and why we're in the position that we want to be in on our votes.
And I would say the flip side though to that is, let's say we decided we did wanna be in the water business for 5 businesses. How do we justify that to the 7,700 or 7,000 other people that live in town that we say, well, we're not in the water business for you. We're in the water business for 5 private businesses. We're not in the water business for Nan's because they are a business, but they're not one of those 5. I mean, that's obviously another issue to take into consideration when we start talking about this, that again, we're talking a very small amount of businesses that would be impacted.
I'd just like to say that I think there are a number of interests that get served at various times in town by some financial commitment, and they aren't serving all residents. I don't have children. I pay taxes for the schools. 66% or whatever of my personal property tax goes to those children in school, which is awesome. And if I did want to stop that, I couldn't. So there's a lot of ways that we're a community, and if we choose to work together, we'll get the synergy of working together. If we choose to work apart, we'll get a different result. And we can bicker over, well, I don't want to pay for your or we can say, all right, as a town, what gives us the most wonderful community and how do we support each other? So
Well, and if we have a more vibrant lower village, that makes everybody wanna come to Stowe some, and then actually it raises our overall values, so, but,
Yeah.
okay, we're gonna go on, you guys are gonna go back and forth on this all night, but I'm gonna let you talk one more time, and then you can talk one more time.
Okay.
Move on.
Fair enough. 2 things. I do think we're putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was
Yeah.
gonna
I
say.
feel you.
We've been in this meeting before.
Because, as the town administrator said, first you have to find out whether there's enough water there, where it is, before we can even have these discussions. And Megan and I have been around this. You can say, I don't wanna get into the water business, and there's still a lot of stuff you can do to help out businesses in Lower Village with water. But I must say this, although we have to put the cart before the horse, the cart has gotta get moving.
Yep.
And the reason I'm saying that is, the things you're saying are almost identical to the things I was saying 3 years ago when my last term was ending. And, cause I remember thinking to myself, oh, I'm gonna have to run on this issue. Now my term is ending again, it's 3 years, talking about, well, we gotta do a feasibility study.
Right.
Now, it's been quite a 3 years, but nonetheless, for a feasibility study, I do think we need to start making some incremental progress on this.
Okay.
I mean, Jim and I were literally on the same page.
Can I jump in on the counter position?
Okay.
Just a really important one. I agree about the cart before the horse. I think that we have to keep in mind that setting up our own infrastructure to discuss such a very hot topic will also take a lot of time. I'm not naive to think that we're gonna set this discussion up in 6 months. I think this is going to take a runway for us to engage in how and make sure we have the right people at the table of how to engage in this issue in the most productive way. And that's why, for me, I think as we get going and we start to see the feasibility, we're gonna set ourselves up where if there is water, we have that relationship. But I think that's gonna be good regardless of water. I think that relationship's going to bleed into all the other business topics we need to talk about. So that's what I, just wanted to say is I agree with you. But
I
I'd
get
like to
that.
get us on that run.
Well, and we have been talking about Lower Village for way more than 3 years, like 20 years, like with the same argument, without a whole lot of background behind it, it's like, if you want a nicer Lower Village, we have to invest something in it, whatever that is, and it's not just the gas station, it's, but, so the same people who would say, I don't wanna pay for it, it's like, well, then stop complaining about what it
looks
Lower
like,
Village looks
right.
like, cause it's, I mean, tell us businesses that don't need water, then we'll
Well, they've
bring
been
them all
coming in and then
Yes,
people
and
complain
then
about
people
them.
complain about it, we got a tank, anyway, so, okay. So the other thing, on our, the sort of the bucket was the well, the bigger bucket was funding, and this is, again, it's, you know, it was like we were just talking about, what are we stuck on? Oh, well, that would be Lower Village, but this was, I think, more about, especially the discussion around, you know, having conversations around capital funding and having more people involved in that conversation more long-term, so that we start as a group, as either, you know, the board and other boards prioritizing. It's not just something that comes at first come, first serve kind of thing. So, again, sort of, I'm looking for feedback on, like, what are the next steps you'd like to see on these, if these are our goals? And again, they probably, I'm looking back at Denise's list again, but, I'm sure there's overlap, but. We're meeting with the capital, which I guess I need to make sure that they're gonna come the beginning of December with capital and finance. Are there other sort of, I mean, is that where we should start there and then we'll sort of go from there?
Is prioritized funding, what do you mean by that? Like the
Well-
CPA funds, like
It's
what kind of funding?
all of, I mean, it's basically looking ahead and saying, okay, we've got, I mean, it's the high school, it's
Got
Stow
it, so
Acres,
it's like
you
a
know,
5 to 10 year funding plan.
having more than what's just on the capital plan, you know, capital planning has their equipment basically planning, but that's about what the horizon is there.
Right.
It's not that much beyond that.
Can I just ask a bigger question
Yes.
about all of this?
Yeah.
What we want to come out of our goals, I am assuming, is that we then take one of these and put that in strategic planning for each meeting, right? Like the goal is to get goals on paper, and then we can focus on one of the goals during this section.
Or that we have a map of what
Right.
what
I
steps
just-
are, some of them aren't just a one meeting discussion.
Right, and I guess I wanna make sure our goals are really our goals. Really, all the policy stuff is Denise. Cause we're not writing we're just voting on them, right? At the end of the day, we're looking at a draft and voting on it, so I just question whether or not we wanna make that our goal. Just my question.
But this came from the discussion we had at the last meeting.
No, I know, and I totally, I'm not saying this came out of nowhere. I'm
Okay.
just saying, the more I've sort of sat with it and seen it all in front of me, the more I'm thinking, I would like something that we can check off. And a lot of these are bigger discussions that we have, but I think I would like to see or have the discussion about what an end goal looks like for these, so that it's something that we can strive towards and we can work towards. And I think that I think that I would like for us to kind of come, a lot of this is so kind of specious, it's just like, it's this really big idea. And we've got some smart people in this room, and I would love to be able to kind of check off some of the things.
Well, I mean, the policies are the easy ones because you can actually check them off because
Right,
we will
Right.
approve them. I think, sort of like with the lower village, like, and, you know, Jim just saying, like, 3 years ago, we were talking about feasibility study, you know, like making progress, and none of these things, I mean, our job is to be setting, you know, sort of direction for the town, and that's something that's been a bit missing in various ways. So we're
Right.
trying to move things forward so that we have that discussion around, say, how are we gonna decide to prioritize, or how will we prioritize as a town, where we wanna put our money, without waiting for some proposal to come up and we just respond to it, you know, to be more proactive. So I think that a lot of these are having those discussions with the right people and
Right.
coming up with a plan, but they're not gonna end this year, as Zach was
no,
saying.
but I mean, even like, so Lower Village, right?
Yeah,
We're gonna have a meeting with the EDIC and the planning board, and we're gonna ask questions, and that's sort of like what we're trying to do. Like, that's how we start moving that goal forward.
okay,
Promoting affordable housing, we work with SMOT, we work with, you know, if we need to contact the legislature about different things. I guess I just wanna make sure any of our goals as a board are not tied into staff goals. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I wanna make sure it's stuff that we can do, and I have a full-time job. Like, I'm not, I'm not gonna be typing up all of that stuff. So I wanna make sure it's something that we can do in this room with the 5 of us.
So that almost by definition means we're talking about meetings, because we're a corporate body
Right.
that doesn't exist except when at least 3 of us are in a row.
Right.
And we've reached consensus that none of us is gonna act on our own, and that the idea of us going off and drafting stuff on our own, with the possible exception of the wonderful statement that we got tonight, is not a very good idea. So really what I think we're talking about here are meetings. Like, I know when I suggested a couple of things, sidewalks and equipment and repaving policy, really, all I'm talking about
It's highway department.
is dealing with the issue. Having the highway department come in and face us with the tough question of, you want sidewalks everywhere? Absolutely, I could do it next year, cost you about $5 million.
Right.
And have us sit there with our mouths open and
Right.
deciding what to do, if anything. Mainly because it's something that people have been talking about for a while. So, you know, I think maybe each of these is a meeting with the relevant board, initially to survey the landscape, then decide what we want to do about it, if anything, and then moving toward that by folding something into the town administrator's work plan possibly the next year. You know, she's our arms and legs, frankly, she does the implementation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that actually is a good way to look at it. It's like we're collecting the information, and if we're ready to then set a goal, right, we can do it.
Or
I
make a
think,
policy.
so what I just, let's see, the thought just went right out of my head.
I think we're talking about edict for Lower Village,
Right,
right? Edict for Lower Village,
Capital planning and finance for funding.
got planning and finance for funding, SMOT.
oh, I know what I was gonna say, so, like, the first time we had, Board of Health come in, you know, they wanted very specific, like, what do you want us to talk about? As opposed to like, we wanna have a conversation. I mean, actually, I gave them specifics, but that's, so I just wanna be, when we start inviting boards to join us for a meeting, we wanna be pretty clear on, like, this is what we wanna talk about, as opposed to like,
So I think that's a
Just
really,
come say hi.
yeah,
Right.
I think it's a
Yeah,
really
do-
important question. Historically, the attitude that a lot of town employees and other boards have had when they come into the selectmen, because frankly, the selectmen were at the time doing a lot of what now the town administrator does. They would come in, say, well, I got this problem, I got that problem, and I got this problem. And literally, the question would be, what is the pleasure of the Board of Selectmen? And that was considered to be a perfectly fair and reasonable question. I thought it was completely useless. You know, I want information, I want a recommendation, I want option A, option B, and option C. I don't wanna have to sit here until 1 o'clock in the morning deciding what building something from the ground up.
right.
And having somebody who makes possibly north of $100,000 kicking their problems of the day to me.
Right.
Obviously, I've had 4 cups of coffee today, in case anybody hasn't noticed.
Better you than me.
had my
But I agree with
hand.
you that we should be setting expectations for what these conversations are.
Yeah.
You know, very much, what's on your mind, how can we help? Recommendations, what are your problems, recommendations on those problems,
Right,
options.
yes, great, okay. That's good, yes, Mr. Burns.
I like the balance between things that tie in with Denise's goals and things that we try to take up and move forward. I like that balance because I think for Denise to advance some of her goals, having us stand and point that that's the direction we're going as a board is really helpful.
Yeah.
Because it's, the board says this is the priority, this is why I'm doing this and not doing the other thing. And I think that's really helpful, because at the end of the day, you only have so much time and we have more issues in town than your time, and we have to then stand up and be the chief executive board to say this is what the priorities of the town are, 'cause this is what the people elected us to do. And so I think that's helpful. But I think that we need to start, and I think this is gonna be a long on-ramp of, as a board, really getting ourselves focused on long-term strategic planning. The 5, 10, 15, 20-year goals. And I think providing that direction so Denise can come and say, these are the spreadsheets, this is what it looks like, we can do that. And I know capital planning made a very big point at the beginning of the meeting, and I thought it was beautiful, right? It's capital, yes, but it's planning. And they wanna be doing that, and I think there's a way to say, okay, let's lean on that, right? This is a committee that says you wanna be planning, I think this is great, like, help us go beyond the 5-year, engines, and let's get out there, let's get way beyond that we need to start to think about this long term. And I think working closely with Denise on that as well. But then I think, FinCom can also provide us great insight, and I think that part of this to me is that question you asked, right, what are we bringing them in to do? And I think it's really saying like, help us know where we can go, and we want that 20-year mark, help us figure out how to get there, right? Come back to us in a quarter or in 6 months and help us know how we should start to think about getting to that mark. Because I think that's where we can really push, and I think it's going to take a year or two to like just get this process going to the point where we start to actually have more things that look like entertainment policy, and all of a sudden we're like, wow, like we actually have that, because we spent a year and a half really breaking it down and going through the public input stuff side of things, so we have public buy-in, right? This is the direction we're going, so jump on and we go to town meeting, we keep asking for the money, and if they want us to go in that direction, I think that's a reinforcing. To the other side, I think these updates and create policies, I think this is exactly the right way to be working with Denise. I think she should be the one drafting these policies because frankly, I think when they come to us, they are 99% exactly where we want it, with some trimming that we would like to make, and I think that's great. I would like to add just one bullet, I think not just reviewing existing policies, but also forming a future policies that we should be considering. What should a town like ours really have? Right, so it's kind of a stock take, what do we really have, and then start to let you all process as agendas are coming up that like, okay, we know that people are gonna start talking about one-day licenses, so that's a priority, and really start to just continuing to bring new policies forward, so that way we can make sure that we, I think, get ourselves to the full breadth of policies we should have while doing that, and so I'd like to see, that as well, and I think that would be a good continuing use of our time to sort of just keep taking bite-sized pieces off of that. What really is, frankly, and I just wanna say, is a massive undertaking, like getting all of our policies that we actually need is a massive undertaking. I know that it looks like it's just really direct, because we have 3 explicit ones here that we need, but like that to me is just the same thing at the level of Lower Village and funding, and I think that's capturing exactly correct. And it just seems like we've already solved what we need, but I think we haven't, we need that stock take.
Well, and as we heard, we're gonna be seeing a lot of policies, because
Right.
we knew we were short on HR, for example, and
Right,
who knows
right.
how many she's got. So, so. And I think, and improving communication between board and committees, that'll be a result of some of this work that we're gonna be doing, so. And it's fine to have some really specific ones like sidewalks, like, hey, Steve, tell us what is tell us all what is entailed in creating sidewalks. Why haven't we done it? Why do we have what we have, and then what would it cost, even if it's a ballpark with.
I think part of that too is so many things in this town I have noticed over the last decade that I've been here are anecdotal. It's, well, we don't do this because of X, Y, and Z.
Right.
I think that if the more we can, with this board's, desire to be as transparent as we can, I think the more people we can bring in to say, all right, well, we would, give us a ballpark figure of what this is gonna cost. And then we can decide whether or not it's something we wanna move forward with. I have one quick question about capital planning. And I believe, I've remembered watching this at town meeting when Steve gets up and gives his spiel about different things and says, in the next couple of years, we know we have these things coming. And a lot of it is the school. A lot of it is bigger things. But I think one thing that could be helpful to capital, if this is not done already, is the different departments know what their what it's gonna look like 5 years out from them, like certain departments.
Yeah, everyone
Then they
submits that.
submit them
That's what
all
they
5
have.
years out though?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
that's
So you'll
exactly
see
what
it,
it
the
is.
report, the report
Yep.
includes the 5-year plan.
perfect.
I mean, the only
So I
problem
do
is
think
that
some of that
there's
is happening.
surprises.
Well, but I mean,
Some are better than others.
right,
Some are better
right.
than others.
You want a new building.
And after about the 3 to 5 range
Right.
is still
Right.
an ambiguous bucket.
Well,
I
there's
guess
always,
that's what it-
and the
yeah.
schools have always, you know, there's
Yeah.
always surprises in the schools that they didn't
Yeah.
expect to ask her.
I guess what I'm saying is there is a framework there,
Yes,
like
there,
a good framework
But-
there, so,
so-
but then there are other things like.
right, because then there's things that don't show up just on their schedule, but, I mean, things
Right.
like, you know, that might come up in CPC
Mhm.
requests, when, you know, oh, well, I mean, this sort of came up, you know, with the town hall last year, it
Yep.
was sort of like, okay, there's town hall, but then there's Stow Acres, and then, you know,
Right.
so the bigger picture of, I
Right.
mean, not that we could have predicted 5 years ago that we would have had Stow Acres
No,
here.
Yeah.
But I think having more of that conversation around, I mean, it goes back to the master planning and sort of the priorities we say we have as a town, which, you know, there's a talk about, you know, hearsay, it's sort of like, did we actually say that, or is that someone translating it, or, and who actually participated in that conversation, and I think that's, you know, getting to that more often.
Mhm.
Not that any of that is wrong, it's just I think we need to have more vibrant, lively conversations about those priorities.
There's a
Periodically.
downside to planning, which is, let's say we had anticipated Stow Acres, and we did, there were conversations about as much as 5 years ago, 7 years ago, we would have set aside $12 million.
Yes, I guess that's, yes,
Right,
to the
right,
point, right. When do we start putting that money aside?
Right.
Right.
So, okay, well, I think we have, I mean, I have a better sense of how we can schedule some of our time going forward, so we don't have to beat this into the ground. Anybody else have any final thoughts on that piece?
I just wanna say one
Yes.
thing, which is that even if we choose not to move something forward and we've done the work, I love the idea of having a, like you've already started, an FAQ that's just like sidewalks. And it like shows, and then when anybody joins and they're like, we should have sidewalks in town, you're like, you should go on the Stowe website and you should
We've
click the
had this
tab
conversation.
sidewalk. You can catch yourself up on, you know, but that's really important because I
Right.
think then
Right.
we're really enabling new folks, folks who've been around for a long time, maybe want to start to get involved, to really start to see like, no, here's the numbers, you know, convince your neighbors to go vote for $10 million to get sidewalks. And if you do,
Right.
put it
Great.
forward, like, you know, but that's the thing to me, and that's what I wanna do, and that's like the water thing and all that, is like getting all that information there to stop what you said, so I love it.
Right. Okay, we have minutes from October 12th,
So many.
2021. A lot on the town meeting warrant. Any changes, questions, concerns about the minutes? I will take a motion to approve.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the minutes of October 12th, 2021 as drafted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you. Correspondence, was there anything? There wasn't really anything. There was one piece of paper in that little
Comcast and
Comcast, right, so that, we're waiting on that one. Okay. Any final words, anything? See, we decided we didn't need a meeting of us before town meeting started. It seemed like we don't have anything else, so
So just show up at
just show up.
10:00.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Still be there early.
9:59.
9:59, whatever, I'll just roll in later.
We didn't decide about the motions, and if we're not gonna have a meeting before, so you're just gonna do all the
I guess I'm
motions?
gonna be reading them.
There's only 9 of them.
Yeah.
Right, that makes, there's nothing,
Yeah.
so, yeah, okay, I'll just do that. And I'll talk to David tomorrow. Okay,
It should be ready to second, just so there isn't an awkward
Yes,
silence.
that's right.
So I'll do that.
we can do that, okay,
Perfect.
right.
Do you need a microphone or you're gonna project?
I'll just
I
project.
think we can
Fantastic.
project, that's right. Okay. Any last motions?
I would like to move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you all. Who's stuck on the call, anybody?